The alien doctor gave up on the human soldier, then he suddenly opened his eyes. My hands were shaking, and my hands never shake. I had 4 eyes fixed on a chest that had stopped rising, and a monitor beside me that had just turned from red to a flat, silent gray. The man in front of me was already gone. I was sure of it, and that certainty was the most frightening thing I had felt in 11 years of war. My name is Aelcor Dessen. I am a combat physician for the Galactic Alliance, and that night I was kneeling in the mud of a ridge on a planet called Threb 9, working on a human soldier whose name tag read Cole. I did not know his first name yet. I did not know his rank. I only knew that something had struck him below the shoulder, and that the damage was worse than a body his size should be able to survive. My scanner had given him a small chance before I even started, a number so low it barely counted as hope. Every minute that number dropped a little more, like a clock counting backward toward something I did not want to reach. The ground around us was cold and uneven, and the only light came from 2 floodlights that kept flickering, as if even they were unsure whether it was worth staying on. I worked anyway. That is the promise every physician makes, no matter which world they come from. We do not promise to save. We promise to try until there is truly nothing left to try. I have made that promise in 4 different languages, to soldiers who did not always understand my words but always understood my hands. My hands are fast. I have earned the trust of soldiers from 4 different worlds because my hands do not hesitate. I sealed what could be sealed. I pushed fluid into a body that was never built to accept it easily. I counted his breaths out loud, a habit from my training, even though there was no one nearby to hear me counting. His heart, a single simple pump doing work that mine shares between 3 chambers, stopped once. I brought it back. It stopped again. I brought it back again. Each time felt like pulling a rope that was slowly being cut from the other end. The 3rd time, it did not answer me. I want to be honest about this, because honesty is the only thing I trust more than instinct. My monitor was not lying. There was no rhythm. There was no breath. When I checked his eyes for any small reaction, there was nothing there either. I checked twice. The 2nd time was not for science. It was for something older than science, something I did not have a word for yet. Even now, after everything that came after, I still do not have a proper word for it. I sat back on my heels. The ridge around us had gone quiet, the way a battlefield goes quiet once the fighting has moved somewhere else to continue without you. My hands were marked with the proof of everything I had just failed to stop. I remember thinking that this was the part of the work no one prepares you for. Not the danger, not the noise. The sudden, total silence that follows a loss. Says there is a phrase we are required to say, even in the field, even to someone who may not understand our language. I said it anyway, quietly, because some part of me needed to say it out loud, as if saying it would make the moment easier to carry. Physician's record. Time of loss. Dessen reporting. I reached forward to close his eyes. They opened before my hand reached him. I wish I could tell you it happened slowly, that some small warning appeared on my scanner first, that I had even 1 second to prepare myself. It did not happen slowly. One moment I was reaching toward stillness, and the next moment his eyes were open, looking straight at me, and the sound coming from his chest was not the sound of an ending. It was a breath, a long, rough, furious breath, like it was being pulled out of a universe that had already decided not to give it back. I have worked in this profession long enough to recognize shock in my own body, even when I am usually the one causing it in others. My hands stopped moving. That had never happened to me before, not once. Not in the middle of any procedure, on any world. My hands simply stopped, frozen above him, as if they no longer knew what to trust. You were gone, I said, switching without thinking into his own language. There was no signal. I had already recorded the loss. He looked at me. At my gray skin, my 4 eyes, the shape of my mouth that I know frightens humans the first time they see it up close. He did not look frightened. He looked annoyed, the way someone looks when they have been pulled out of a nap they were enjoying. Not the first time, he said. His voice was cracked and barely there at all. Won't be the last either, if you keep staring instead of finishing that seal on my shoulder. I finished the seal. My hands were still shaking, and he noticed, because apparently even a man who has just come back from nothing still notices small things around him. First alien doctor I've seen look that rattled, he said. Thought your people didn't get scared. We do not have a word in your language for what I am feeling right now, I told him honestly. The closest meaning is somewhere between fear and theft. As if something had been taken from the world, and then quietly given back without any explanation at all. He laughed at that. It clearly cost him something, because the laugh turned into a cough, and the cough turned into a wince, but he laughed anyway. "That's just called Tuesday where I'm from," he said. I did not understand what he meant by that. I did not ask. I was too busy recording numbers that, according to everything I had learned, should not exist. A heart restarting without any outside push, or brain activity returning, after a gap my instruments called complete. A body that had somehow decided, entirely on its own, that the matter of ending was not yet settled. The recovery team reached us not long after that, moving fast across the ridge with a stretcher and bright lights that felt almost too gentle after the darkness we had been sitting in. I rode with Cole back to the ship, keeping one hand near his shoulder the entire way, not because he needed it anymore, but because I think I needed to feel that he was still there. Once he was resting under proper lights in a proper medical bay, I asked one of our senior physiologists about what I had seen. She had studied humans for far longer than I had. What she told me, I have since heard from many others in many different ways, always with the same tired, gentle patience. Human death, she said, is not always a clean line. Sometimes it is more like a door that stays open a little longer than it should. And something inside a human, some mix of stubbornness and refusal and quiet anger, reaches back through that open door and pulls it shut, sometimes from the wrong side. I did not fully believe her. I am a physician. I believe in oxygen, in pressure, in the electrical rhythm of a working heart. But since that night, I have treated many more humans in situations my instruments called impossible to survive. And many more times, a number that should have stayed at 0 quietly refused to agree. I still keep the recording from that night. Not the medical file, that one is filed away, ordinary, expected. I keep the sound recording, the several seconds between when I said the words of loss and when Cole opened his eyes, because I want to remember exactly how certain I felt, and exactly how wrong that certainty turned out to be. Cole serves on my crew now. He asked to join after his recovery, for reasons that were difficult for me to translate at first. Something about owing a debt to the doctor who did not stop, even after his heart had already gone quiet. I explained to him, more than once, that there was no debt. I explained that I am bound by duty to keep trying no matter what, that I would have done the same for any soldier from any world under my care. He told me that was not the point. He said the point was that I looked like I truly meant it. Months later, on a different mission, a young engineer named Grace was brought into my medical bay, after an accident near one of the ship's power lines. Her injuries were not as severe as Cole's had been, but her numbers still fell faster than I wanted them to, and for a moment I felt that same old fear rising in my chest, the fear that history was about to repeat itself in the worst possible way. Cole was there that day, standing near the door, quiet and watchful, the way he often is now during difficult procedures. I worked on Grace with the same hands, the same focus, but this time I left a small space open in my mind, a space I had not known how to leave open before that night on Threb 9. I did not assume the worst the moment the numbers dropped. I kept working, calmly, steadily, as if some part of me had learned to trust the door might not close as easily as the instruments suggested. Grace's heart held on. It never fully stopped, not the way Cole's had, but watching her recover reminded me of the lesson I had learned the hard way, the lesson I now carry into every difficult case involving a human patient. I have stopped arguing with people who have returned from moments my own instruments called impossible. Some things I have learned are better recorded quietly than explained loudly. There is one more thing I want to say, because it still sits with me even now. A few weeks after that first night, Cole asked me why I had checked his eyes twice before recording the loss. He said, "Most doctors only check once." I told him the truth. I said that some part of me, some quiet, stubborn part that had nothing to do with training, refused to accept the number my scanner was giving me. He smiled at that and said maybe that quiet, stubborn part of me was not so different from whatever kept him breathing that night. I think about that often now, whenever I work on a new patient from his world. I still trust my instruments. I still trust the numbers. But I have learned to leave a small space open, just in case something inside a person decides, quietly and without warning, to walk back through a door that should already be closed. That space has never once been wrong to leave open, and I suspect, for as long as I keep working beside humans, it never fully will be.